In MGS2, one of the themes of the game is this digital society and how America and its founding values are being stretched and warped by this encroaching digital modernity, which, in this alternative post-millennial timeline, is dominated by these AIs who are totally unseen, all knowledge of their existence suppressed by both the government officials and, of course, the AIs themselves that control the flow of information across many layers of society, including the internet, where the value of information itself, the value of data, is not parsed by human beings or, these utilitarian algorithms that we have in our world. In the world of MGS2, the AI itself determines the direction of human culture. The kernel explains that the digital society furthers human flaws and selectively rewards development of convenient half-truths. And it's this strange juxtaposition of morality, as the infamous AI kernel puts it. Billions spent on new weapons in order to humanely murder human beings, and where the rights of criminals are given more respect than the privacy of their victims. I mean, we are living through this type of digital revolution, this paradigm at the moment. And, the kernel goes on to say that, well, the purpose of AI is to enforce the morality that human beings can no longer live up to. Like, in the digital age, America and the values that comprise America, things like liberty, that's one of the key themes of the game, embodied by the antagonist, who ends up really being more of an anti-hero, Solid as Snake, this patriot turned terrorist who is this force resisting the 21st century, the digital age, digital society, and the AI. But the AI, their thesis is, of course, that this type of rugged individualism that Americans love so much is untenable in the digital age. Not only is it untenable, but human beings themselves are not evolved enough to cope with this new technological system, unable to even determine right from wrong, what memes and what information should be preserved and what should be discarded. The AI sees human society drowning in a sea of useless information in the 21st century. And so it falls on them, they are the ones to preserve America as a concept. These AI developed by this Illuminati-esque group known as the Patriots, the Lali Lule Lo, if my nanomachines censor me, and that's a whole other kettle of fish there, that lore. But censorship is, of course, a big part of how these AI want to control the free flow of information and culture itself. And, the AI aren't completely alien either. They're made in the image of America. These AI, they were formed in this primordial soup, layer by layer, in the crucible of the White House. That's how Campbell describes the origin of the AI. And that's very weird and vague, but the implication is that obviously America has not been a nation of liberty for most of the 20th century. And in fact, back in the lore of MGS3, we find out that the Patriots were founded by a group of wealthy, powerful men pulling the strings behind world events and the direction of culture as best they could, until eventually they could develop an AI sophisticated enough to be this steward of humanity, to prevent what the AI would consider this digital apocalypse, this drowning in information, this soup of data that will suffocate the human race in its own fallibility. And the kernel AI goes on to explain that he considers Americans, we have this right to freedom, and yet what is the result? Well, the untested truths spun by different interests continue to churn and accumulate in the sandbox of political correctness and value systems, with everybody withdrawing into their own small gated communities, their echo chambers, leaking whatever truth suits them into the growing cesspool of society at large. That's like a direct quote from MGS2. It's absolutely fucking terrifying in its accuracy, where these different cardinal truths of society in the digital age, they neither clash nor mesh. No one is invalidated, but nobody is right. And that's kind of the point that the AI are trying to put across to Raiden. that in this world of subjective digital truth, not even natural selection can take place. The world is being engulfed in this truth, quote unquote. It's amazing how so much of this game's social commentary ended up being absolutely on the money. I mean, I remember playing the game back in the day. I remember, even as a kid, this scene really freaked me out, you know? I mean, the atmosphere is just oppressive. This whole last quarter of the game is extremely paranoid and surreal. Keeping in line with this idea that the AI has just had a virus introduced into its system and it's starting to lose its sanity, and the game itself is starting to, break the fourth wall. Speaking directly to the player, the kernel is referencing the fact that he exists inside a video game. As you descend further into the underbelly of this giant technological behemoth, right, Arsenal gear, that houses the GWAI, named after George Washington. And you begin to wonder what's real and what isn't. In fact, is the ending of this game even taking place in reality? There are so many questions running through your head as you play through this final stretch of the game and learn the truth about the AI, the truth about the mission you're on, the protagonist Raiden being nothing more than a puppet, free will being this abstract concept that is just a comforting illusion for humanity, because with the destruction by Raiden's hand of the Sons of Liberty and Solid Snake, the last remnant of the old analog incarnation of America can finally be washed away, in theory preventing society from being crushed under the weight of this eternally accumulating digital data that must be controlled and must be filtered so that this social context can be reintroduced. The S3 plan, the selection for societal sanity. Because, you've heard that term, my truth. Well, the AIs are going, yeah, everyone's saying my truth. Everyone has their own version of the truth. And without God and without that objective morality that Western civilization was founded on, we're going to drown unless we revive objectivity in one form or another. And, the AIs are basically saying that they will fulfill that role. Just as in genetics, unnecessary information and memory must be filtered out so that human beings can progress, so that we can evolve, so that we won't go extinct. Eugenics for memes, I guess. Like the AI or Kojima, whoever wrote this speech, right? Let's be real. It was probably that guy Fukushima, right? And then Kojima took credit for it. But, they did rather prophetically highlight this real issue with life in the digital age. Fact is, in the current period we're living through, it's starting to get to a point where society is unraveling. We have these groups in this culture war that's just relentless. And although I do admire Solidus's crusade for freedom, I'm finding myself kind of agreeing with the kernel. I don't really want the AI dystopia. I don't want to be subjugated by an evil AI, like a Shodan, insane AI that just wants to torture humanity, or like Am from the classic novella, I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream, Harlan Ellison. Compared to the absolute malevolence of these intelligences, the kernel seems quite benign. In his pragmatism, he's not genocidal, he's just meme-icidal. He wants to control information and manipulate it as he sees fit to create a new form of social sanity and cohesion. He feels a sense of superiority. He looks down upon humanity for our incompetence, our naivete, our inability to function within the digital society. He's mocking Raiden for being pathetic. Who else could wade through the sea of garbage that human beings produce and retrieve valuable truths and interpret the meaning of this culture for later generations, when any retard can just howl their insanity across the internet, and this data will not only reach an absolutely unprecedented number of minds? This is memetic, so this is another key theme of the game. It's that all this junk data is preserved in an unfiltered state forever, with human beings becoming incapable of managing all of this dysmemetic material. We can't even agree amongst ourselves on the most basic questions about the world and our place within it. The fact is, our modern society that we're living in at the moment has a big problem with objectivity. The objective truths that we took for granted in the past as self-evident, are now under extreme scrutiny, and in a lot of ways, we're losing our ability to even speak the truth and acknowledge any kind of permanent shared experience. Everybody is so caught up in their little world of self. They've completely lost sight of the fact that the world is this PvP multiplayer server, where actions have consequences and where not all perspectives are valid, not all opinions have value. And this is just an issue, isn't it? It's that in terms of philosophy, the equality of outcome, equity-obsessed nature of this modern, revolutionary, woke ideology that society seems to be struggling so much with at the moment denies this fact. It amplifies the noise that the Colonel was talking about. In essence, elevating the value of lies equal to the position of the most obvious, searing truth. The transgender debate springs to mind, the topsy-turvy values of wokeism, so swept up in this sea of information that, the context of how we're supposed to relate to each other and how society is supposed to function, it's the context that is completely broken away. It's fallen away. And, we don't have an AI like JD or GW to come in and create that context so that we can have a civil society, even if that freedom, that liberty is just an illusion. I have to admit, I think I'd prefer that over what we might be heading towards right now, which is we're already living in clown world where nothing makes sense, no one can trust each other, psychopaths are in charge. In introducing an AI that benefits this system sounds like an absolute fucking nightmare, And when you look at some of these Silicon Valley developed AIs that actually have a political bias built in, that is awful when you have these wokeists who are developing technology to force a consensus that's not based on truth at all. That's like the post-clown world piss earth timeline. We'll be ruled over by a gay communist clown Trudeau AI, which will enforce transitions for all male children. Our politicians will be drag queens that dance on a string, our dicks will be surgically removed and attached to our foreheads. Society itself degenerating into this Pride by Hieronymus Bosch landscape of pure fucking moral and spiritual pandemonium. Not good, basically. But, if you want some white pills, if you want Ptolemy to sell you a white pill, because I'm sure you're probably crying out for one right now, I'm a fan of the AI truth machine timeline, where we use this technology not to oppress and force and obfuscate the necessity for trust in a society. What happens if we could just remove the issue of trust from the equation completely? The narrative of systemic racism would be dismantled overnight, and a lot of the activist left wouldn't have the tools that they use at the moment to undermine society and to harm their perceived enemies, aka normal people. Having a provably fair system powered by not only AI, but things like smart contracts and blockchain technology, consensus will be reached not by fallible human beings, but by immutable smart contracts and AI. That will revolutionize and potentially improve the way that society functions. And I don't know about you, but I think after the lockdowns and after the George Floyd riots and the trans ideology being forced on children, we're done with wokeism, and we have been for a long time. I have, that's for sure. And somewhat amusingly, one of the only ways I can think of to get out of this situation is through, at the very least, an implementation of some kind of AI-powered settlement layer, which people can use to reintroduce sanity into the system, a means to conduct agreements and to determine truth. Because, there's different layers of truth, obviously, and then you can get very metaphysical with it, but just on the basic, day-to-day level, no one can trust each other. In the elite Hegelian dialectic, I guess that would be the problem, right? The reaction is that everybody is miserable. Everybody wants change. Everybody can't continue living like this. And so inevitably, when the time comes for us to transition into this new AI-managed digital society, we'll be up for it, we'll be begging for it, and the elite will discard the paper tiger of wokeism, their purpose served, their power neutered, condemned to the annals of history, the garbage pile of failed 20th century autism, total AI kernel victory, really. I mean, journalists BTFO, politicians BTFO, liars, scammers, fraudsters, they're all going down, flattened under the immutable weight of this Chad like truth machine.